It is not an accident that you are here right now, and it is not an accident that this question found you. Before any explanation, before any interpretation, before your mind tries to turn this into something logical or safe, I want you to do something that sounds simple, but has become almost impossible in the modern world. Stop thinking. Not forever, just for a moment. In front of you, imagine horses, not symbols yet, not meanings, just horses. Standing, moving, breathing. You don't need to name them. You don't need to analyze them. You don't need to choose the right one. Simply notice which horse draws your attention without effort. That pull matters. The moment you start asking why, you move away from the answer. Because the mind loves explanations, but truth doesn't need them. As Alan Watts often reminded us, reality is not something you figure out. It is something you participate in. Horses have always represented something deeply human: power without aggression, movement without anxiety, presence without self-consciousness. A horse does not doubt its own being. It does not ask permission to exist. It moves when it moves, stops when it stops, and never apologizes for its nature. That is why this works. You are not choosing a horse. You are noticing which rhythm of life your nervous system recognizes right now. The conscious mind wants control. It wants labels, categories, conclusions. But your deeper awareness speaks through attraction, discomfort, curiosity, resistance. Alan Watts explained that we don't experience the world from the outside looking in. We experience it as the world happening through us. So the horse that catches your attention is not random. It reflects the way life is currently flowing through you. Some people feel calm when they look. Others feel tension. Others feel familiarity, excitement, or even unease. None of these reactions are mistakes. Even resistance is a form of recognition. Sometimes we are drawn not to what is comfortable, but to what is necessary. Hold that image gently. Don't rush ahead. Let it stay with you. This is not a personality test. It is not a prediction of your future. And it is certainly not a label. It is a mirror of your present state of being, the way you are relating to movement, control, freedom, and direction right now. Alan Watts spoke often about how much of human suffering comes from resisting our own flow, from trying to stand still in a river and then wondering why we feel exhausted. The horse appears here as a reminder of movement that does not fight itself. As you observe, you may notice something subtle. The horse doesn't ask you who you are. It doesn't demand a story. It simply exists and invites you to notice how tightly or loosely you are holding yourself. Many people spend years trying to understand themselves through effort, analysis, and self-improvement. But some truths only surface when effort relaxes, when you stop forcing meaning and allow meaning to reveal itself. This is why this experience works. It bypasses explanation and touches awareness directly. Before we continue, make a quiet agreement with yourself. Stay open. Don't rush to conclusions. What you're about to notice already influences your choices, your relationships, and the way you respond to life, even if you've never put words to it before. And if you feel the pull to share, leave a comment with this simple sentence: I noticed the horse before I understood it, not as a declaration, as a recognition. And if you want to continue this kind of exploration, not as motivation, not as instruction, but as a deeper way of seeing, subscribe and stay with us. Now let's begin to listen more closely to what the horse you noticed is already telling you. If the first horse that drew your attention felt calm, grounded, almost effortless in its presence, there is something important being revealed about your relationship with life right now. This horse represents a state of inner stillness that does not come from stopping, but from moving without resistance. It is the kind of calm that exists even in motion, a deep alignment between action and awareness. When you look at this horse, there is no urgency, no need to prove anything, no inner argument about where you should be next. People drawn to this horse often carry a quiet strength. They don't rush to announce themselves. They don't need to dominate the room. Their power comes from being fully where they are. Alan Watts spoke often about this kind of presence, the ability to act without the constant commentary of the mind interfering with every step. But there is a subtle challenge here. Sometimes this calm is genuine flow, and sometimes it is a form of holding back, a way of staying comfortable by avoiding the disruption that growth can bring. You may tell yourself that you are at peace, while quietly ignoring a deeper impulse that wants to move faster, louder, or further. The question this horse asks is not whether you are calm, but whether your calm is alive. Stillness that flows is very different from stillness that stagnates. One is rooted in awareness. The other is rooted in fear of disturbance. Now, if the horse that chose you felt powerful, muscular, charged with energy, a sense of readiness, tension, or restrained force, then your relationship with movement is different. This horse represents vitality that wants expression, life pushing forward through you, an impulse to act, to create, to move, to test limits. There is often a strong sense of direction here, even if it is not fully defined yet. Alan Watts often reminded us that energy itself is not the problem. The problem arises when we try to control it too tightly or suppress it out of fear of chaos. People connected to this horse often feel frustrated when confined by routines, expectations, or slow-moving systems. They feel alive when there is momentum. But this energy has a shadow. Unchecked movement becomes agitation. Action without awareness becomes exhaustion. You may find yourself always doing, always planning the next step, rarely resting inside the moment itself. The body moves forward, but the mind never arrives. This horse asks you to notice whether your movement is playful or compulsive, whether you are moving with life or running from silence. There is another kind of horse that draws people in quietly, one that appears observant, almost distant, not weak, but reserved, watching before moving, sensing the environment before acting. If this is the horse that chose you, it reflects a deep sensitivity to rhythm and timing. You intuitively feel when something is ready and when it is not. You understand that forcing movement at the wrong moment creates friction. Alan Watts spoke beautifully about this, the art of waiting without resisting, of letting action arise naturally, like a wave rather than a command. Yet here too there is a delicate balance. Waiting can become hesitation. Awareness can become overthinking disguised as wisdom. You may tell yourself that you are being patient, when in truth you are postponing a step that already knows how to take itself. This horse asks a quiet but penetrating question. Are you listening to timing or hiding inside it? None of these horses are better or worse. They are expressions of how life is currently dancing through you. Each reveals a relationship with control, freedom, effort, and trust. What matters is not identifying with one forever, but noticing which quality is most alive in you now. If something in this reflection resonates, leave a comment with this sentence: I'm learning to move without forcing. And if these explorations help you see yourself more clearly, not as a problem to fix, but as a process to understand, subscribe and continue with us. Because the horse is not leading you somewhere new. It is reminding you of a rhythm you already know. In the next part, we will explore what happens when movement itself becomes a teacher, and how freedom is often misunderstood when we try to hold it too tightly. Just stay with the image a little longer. There is a moment, if you stay with the image long enough, when the horse stops being something you look at and starts becoming something you feel, not as an idea, not as a symbol to decode, but as a movement happening inside you. This is where the real insight begins. Alan Watts often spoke about how we misunderstand freedom. We imagine it as total control or total absence of limits. But true freedom, he said, is more like dancing. You don't dominate the dance, and you don't disappear inside it either. You respond. If the horse that chose you feels wild, unpredictable, almost untamed, this says something important about your relationship with freedom. There is a part of you that resists being fully defined. You feel uncomfortable when life becomes too structured, too repetitive, too known. Rules feel heavy. Predictability feels dull. You come alive in moments of uncertainty, when the path isn't fully visible yet. This horse reflects a deep intuition that life is not meant to be controlled but explored. You sense, even if you've never said it out loud, that trying to secure everything kills something essential. Alan Watts warned us about this illusion, the belief that safety comes from certainty, when in reality certainty is often what suffocates us. But here is the subtle trap. Freedom can quietly turn into avoidance. If you are always moving away from structure, you may never stay long enough for depth to form. If you are always chasing the next horizon, you may never allow roots to grow. Movement, when unconscious, can become a sophisticated way of escaping intimacy, with others and with yourself. This horse asks you to notice whether your freedom is playful or defensive, whether you are dancing with uncertainty or using it to avoid commitment. There is another presence that often goes unnoticed at first, a horse that feels heavy, slow, almost burdened. Not weak, but carrying weight, history, responsibility, memory. If this is the horse that chose you, it reveals a deep familiarity with effort. You understand endurance. You know how to carry obligations, expectations, and emotional weight for long periods of time. You may be the one others rely on, the one who stays when things get difficult. Alan Watts spoke about how easily we confuse responsibility with identity. We begin to believe that we are the weight we carry, that letting go would mean failure, that rest would mean collapse. This horse reflects a life lived with seriousness, with purpose, but it also carries a quiet exhaustion. When weight is never released, even strength begins to harden. The question this horse brings is not whether you are capable. You already know that you are. The question is whether you allow yourself to put the burden down without guilt. Sometimes the deepest freedom is not movement forward, but permission to stop pushing. As you listen to these reflections, something important may start to happen. You may notice that more than one horse feels familiar, more than one description touches something real. This is not confusion. This is awareness expanding. Alan Watts reminded us again and again that life is not a straight line. It is not a fixed identity moving through time. It is a process, a play of forces, rhythms, tensions, and releases. When we try to reduce ourselves to a single role or pattern, suffering increases. The horse that chose you first shows where your energy is most concentrated right now, but the others are not absent. They are waiting, quiet, ready to step forward when the moment calls. If this resonates, leave a comment with this sentence: I'm noticing how I move through life. Not as a conclusion, as an observation. And if you want to keep exploring these questions, not to become better, but to become more honest, subscribe and stay with us. In the final part, we will bring all of this together, not by choosing the right horse, but by understanding why no single horse was ever meant to lead alone. For now, stay with the feeling. Let the image breathe. Let it move when it wants to move, and rest when it needs to rest. Because life, like the horse, was never meant to be forced. At this stage, something important has already happened, whether you noticed it consciously or not. The original question has quietly dissolved. It no longer feels urgent to ask which horse chose you. That need has softened, and in its place, another awareness begins to emerge, one that cannot be forced or summarized, only noticed. This is where many people expect an answer, a conclusion, a final meaning they can carry away like an object. But as Alan Watts reminded us again and again, the desire to arrive is often the very thing that keeps us restless. Life is not a problem waiting to be solved. It is an experience unfolding, moment by moment, without asking for our permission. The horse was never a test. It was never asking you to define yourself. It was never pointing toward a fixed identity. It was showing you how you are relating to movement right now. When you look back at the horses you encountered, calm, powerful, wild, burdened, you may notice something subtle. Each one felt real. Each one resonated in its own way. And this is where the deeper understanding begins, because none of these movements exist in isolation. They are not separate compartments of your personality. They are expressions of the same life energy appearing in different rhythms. Alan Watts spoke often about how human suffering arises when we mistake a temporary state for a permanent definition. We say, "This is who I am," when in truth, this is simply how life is moving through us at this moment. The horse you noticed first reflects where your attention, tension, and vitality are currently concentrated. Nothing more, nothing less. Problems begin when we cling, when calm turns into avoidance of necessary change, when strength turns into constant pressure to perform, when freedom turns into refusal to stay, when responsibility turns into silent self-erasure. None of these are moral failures. They are natural imbalances. Life is always adjusting itself, and when one movement dominates for too long, another begins to call for attention. That call often arrives as discomfort, repetition, or a quiet sense that something is out of sync. We tend to interpret these signals as signs that something is wrong with us. But Alan Watts would gently laugh at this idea. What if nothing is wrong at all? What if what you call confusion is simply life asking you to shift your rhythm? The horse does not argue with the terrain. It responds. It adjusts. It slows when the ground is uneven and accelerates when the path opens. It does not cling to a single pace out of pride or fear. And this responsiveness is what gives it both power and grace. You see, freedom is often misunderstood. We imagine it as endless options, constant movement, or total lack of constraint. But freedom, as Watts described it, is not the absence of form. It is the ability to move with form without being trapped by it, to participate fully without needing to control the outcome. This is why the horse never asked you to follow it. It asked you to listen, to notice where you are forcing life instead of cooperating with it, to see where you are resisting rest when rest is needed, to recognize where you are clinging to weight long after it has stopped being necessary. At some point, many people realize they have been living as if life were an exam, always preparing, always improving, always trying to get it right. But life is not grading you. It is inviting you to play your part in its movement, not perfectly, but honestly. This is not about becoming better. It is about becoming more responsive. When you allow this understanding to settle, something loosens. You stop demanding clarity before taking the next step. You stop waiting for certainty before allowing yourself to move. You stop insisting on knowing who you are before living. Alan Watts often said that the universe is not a thing, but an event. And you are not in it, you are it, happening where you are. The horse appears here as a reminder of that truth. It moves because movement is what it is, not because it has a plan, not because it fears stopping, not because it needs approval. And perhaps that is the quiet lesson you are meant to carry forward. You do not need to decide who you are today. You only need to notice how you are moving. Are you pushing when listening would serve you better? Are you waiting when movement is already asking to happen? Are you holding weight that no longer belongs to you? These questions do not require immediate answers. They work slowly beneath the surface, reshaping how you relate to effort, rest, freedom, and responsibility. If you feel this reflection resonate, leave a comment with this simple sentence: I'm learning to move with life, not against it, not as a statement of achievement, as a direction. And if you want to continue exploring these ideas, not to collect insights, but to experience them more fully, subscribe and stay with us. This is not a place for quick conclusions. It is a space for deeper noticing, because the horse never came to guide you somewhere else. It came to remind you of a rhythm you already know. And when you stop trying to control that rhythm, life no longer feels like something to manage or endure. It begins to feel like something you can finally participate in, fully, honestly, and without force. That is where the question dissolves, and that is where freedom quietly begins.